Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reedy with Future Pastimes, and we're reading Dune. In this chapter, we've caught up with Gurney Halleck, who is in Sanctuary with the smugglers. So he's having a conversation with Staben Tuick, who is the son of the smuggler Esmar Tuick, who was killed during the attack, presumably trying to ferry Lady Jessica and Paul and other important people of the royal household out, but couldn't get out in time, probably killed by Dr. Yui, but could have been by Harkonnens as well. Gurney has rescued 70-some of the Atreides forces, the men that he has been serving with, and gotten them this far. And now he's trying to sort out what it is that is going to happen next. He's also trying to get some information. But Staben Tuick makes it very clear that, one, he would very much like Gurney and his men to stay and work with the smugglers, because they need good, experienced fighting men in their efforts to smuggle spice off of Arrakis. But two, that they do not want Gurney or his men to compromise them in any way. So there's no seeking revenge on the Harkonnens, not directly and not immediately. But he says, here's the deal. They are our enemies, and they did kill my father, even if it was the traitor that did it. So we're going to deal with them, but we don't do it rashly. And he appeals to Gurney's sense of logic and strategy, and Gurney is eventually convinced that this is the best bet. He wants to stay to get revenge for sure, especially when he learns that Rabban is going to be in charge of Arrakis. And Rabban basically was responsible for killing Gurney's family and giving him the ink-fine scar on his jaw. So he wants to get revenge, and he says, I'm staying here no matter what. But I would like to let my men make their own decision. And Staben is like, that's great, but they followed you this far, and so, it's probably in their best interests to keep following you. But he says, ultimately, it's your decision. And so Gurney, I think, is impressed with Staben. He's now in charge of the smuggling operations, but he's no dummy, and he's following basically his father's advice and direction for how to run the operation. And so Gurney is going to stay. He shares with Staben that Thufir thought that Lady Jessica was probably the traitor. Staben is like, well, maybe or maybe not, but it's academic at this point, because everyone seems to believe that she and Paul were killed in the storm, and even their bodies were unlikely to be found. And that he explains that Thufir has been captured by the Harkonnens, and that the Duke is definitely dead. So Gurney is like, well, that's it then. And so he says, yeah, I pledge my sword to you. You let me know when it's time to start stabbing Harkonnens with it, and I'll be your man. And he goes to say, I'm going to go make sure that my men are all set up, and then, we'll have that discussion about their fate, whether they stay or go. They are going to stay long enough to work off their debt for being rescued by the smugglers, but Staben is, of course, hoping that they'll stay on and keep working with and becoming smugglers themselves. And it ends with Gurney he's going out, he's checking out the cave, and he's impressed with the operation here. It looks like they're well organized, and they've got a good setup, and they're doing what they can for the wounded Atreides men. He's impressed that when he enters the room, the Atreides who can stand are standing, but one of them comes forward with his balisette and hands it to him and says, one of the guys is definitely not going to make it. And he's requested a song, and Gurney realizes that somebody's already tuned his balisette for him, and he plays the song, and the guy dies. And I found it to be a pretty moving chapter. There's that sort of battle camaraderie, and you really get a sense that these men, the statement that these men have followed you this far is repeated a couple of times in the chapter, and you get a strong sense that while all of these men were probably proud to serve Duke Leto and be part of the Atreides, army, but these are Gurney's men, and they would follow him anywhere. You just definitely get that sense that they have that really strong bond, and that it looks likely that most of them who can stay and continue serving Gurney with the smugglers very likely will stay. So yeah, it's a great chapter. I really love seeing insight into what else is going on in Arrakis. It's really easy to think, all right, well, you've got the Atreides and Arrakeen, and then you got the Fremen out in the desert, but there's more going on the planet. There are a lot of other stakeholders on there. There's guild people on the planet, and the smugglers are part of the community there, as well as having a secret operation where they're working illicitly. So like Esmar Tuick was a known figure, which we learned earlier in that banquet scene. Everybody knew who he was, and they basically all probably knew he was a smuggler, and probably had a lot of connections, and he had a lot of muscle, so not to be trifled with. And so it's nice to see some of that other insight into what else goes on the planet. It is a central planet, and that is because of the spice. The spice it's very valuable, and it's very useful. And yeah, of course, the spice mining operations go on, but there's smuggling that goes on, and it gets out. And clearly the guild is in on it, because the part of what goes on here is Staban explaining the reason, one of the main reason probably, that we can't get into it with the Harkonnens right now, at least not openly, is because the guild doesn't want that to happen. And so the guild is very much involved in the smuggling operation. And of course they would have to be. The smugglers would have to deal with the guild to get the spice off planet, or out of the system. And that's one of the big reasons why in the Dune board game, if you're looking at the guild faction itself, it's mostly smugglers that are in that faction, as well as other people of commerce and industry who are involved with the spice. So like Master Butte and Susu Suk. So yes, it's an interesting dynamic. And for me, I really like this idea of Gurney Halleck is still on Arrakis and still wants to cause trouble for the Harkonnen. So that, even the first time when I read this, I was very excited. I was very excited that Gurney was still alive, and excited that he was not going to be fleeing Arrakis, but hoping to stay and get his revenge. And so, as a teenager reading this for the first time, I was like, yes, we got to get the revenge. Duncan is dead, and Thufir's been captured, and the Duke is dead. So yeah, you want the good guys to, overcome adversity. So I like this chapter a lot. In terms of adaptations, this is a scene that was not in the Lynch movie. We do later on learn what became of Gurney in the Lynch movie. We get a little taste of it in the mini series, but not to this extent. And then we have yet to see with the Villeneuve, as of the recording of this chapter's summary. This part 2 has not come out yet, so it'll be interesting to see. We know from the trailer that Gurney has still been there. He's doing something. It's clear that it's similar to the Patrick Stewart reunion in the Lynch movie. That scene is teased in the trailer, so we do get that sense. But how much of what leads up to that, any involvement with the smugglers, we have not seen in Esmar Tuick so far in the Villeneuve movie, and at this point his character would be dead. So will we see a Staban Tuick? Yeah, who knows? Hasn't been announced yet, but certainly a possibility. How big of a role also remains to be seen. But I look forward to that, and we'll revisit that after the second movie comes out. as we dissect and investigate all of the stuff that was and wasn't included from the book. So that's it for this chapter, everyone. Thanks for watching. We'll keep reading, and we'll see you again soon.